Alright, another response video to an Andy video, number 5. So I'm rendering another video, and I don't, I think it's a great video, absolutely fantastic, and I don't want to retract any of it. But he has qualified his Randianism, yeah, sort of. He hasn't denied it entirely, but he's qualified it as being more Nietzsche than Rand. But I don't see the distinction does not really exist. The concept is there's something in the fundamental nature that's not, that's something that is functional, and that's the presumption, that there is something in just the gameplay itself that has value, and that the add-ons are somehow an impediment to the native function. Again, I could even point to Jesus Christ as being someone who said, look, we can't do civilization right, so let's run away from it. Like it can't be fixed. All right, so now he's done a video where he did these metaphors of trying to almost pigeonhole, like there's two ways to live, being an individual or being a collectivist, and I don't buy that argument. That's the Democrat-Republican dichotomy that I think is just absolutely useless. The collective is often wrong, because the collective, through democracy, becomes a gang war, and gangs aren't any better than individuals at defining the truth. And that's really what philosophers are discussing. We're discussing what is the truth, what is the optimum design qualifications. Like any kind of scientist, we're looking for the most efficient equation. Scientists will do that, mathematicians will do that. They'll have a complex equation, and they'll rationally reduce it to the things that really matter, the things that are the constituent functions, the real functions of the equation, the ones that are making something happen, and get rid of the superfluous weights that are on both sides. So I just don't see your metaphors as useful. I'm not defending democracy even, or cops. The system, especially the democracies we have, which are incredibly flawed at percolating intelligence into our law. And that's the philosopher, I think, obviously would say the best law is the most intelligent law. Not whatever everybody agrees to is not necessarily correct. So agreement is not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is logical and rational and reasonable and unassailable reason. Almost in the fail-safe sense, perfect law, perfect conceptual principle. You could almost argue there's a piece of that in the Jeffersonian fair fight notion of, my rights end where your rights begin. That's where the fence is, and there's a certain purity to that kind of logic. The do unto others as you would have others do unto you, or have others do unto you. There's a perfect reason to that kind of statement. It's pretty unassailable in simplistic concept. So I guess that's what I really want to get to, is that I just think your formulas are way too obtuse, and the model needs to be made simpler. And so I would like you maybe to deal with my model for a change. And if I say to you, the model is a checkerboard, it's a game that we're playing out. And there are no players, in the sense that there's just pieces. And the pieces are playing the game. There's no red team and white team and all that kind of stuff. There's just pieces on the board. And they are playing each other. So there's pawns and bishops and kings and rooks, and let's say there's some sort of gameplay. Obviously where some pieces have more power, and other pieces have less power, and they just play out the game in terms of what they interact with, what maneuvers become possible from their point of view, what they can do in the game of the strategy. All right, so that's the premise. That's the game we're playing. And we could call, regular humans the pawns. Let's just say you're a pawn. Or we could even say we're bishop, or we're rook as humans, and we could say, the animal kingdom are the pawns. But I'm just saying, let's just reduce it. Instead of 1,000,000 species, let's just reduce all the plants to one piece, and all the mammals to one piece, or all the apes to one piece, and then all the carnivores to one piece, and all the prey animals to one piece. And just so you get it conceptually, that these are the stakeholders playing the game, that they have interest, and that they will be damaged in some way. They will lose points or gain points. They will gain comfort or lose comfort based on the interactions. So let's consolidate them, and then say they play the game, and what they're playing for is this comfort mechanism. They'll change from color from black to white, dependent on their state, how they're doing in the game. And let's reduce human beings, let's say, to a dozen pawns, a dozen pieces. And we could say, this is group A, whitey, and this is group B, blackie. We could play that game. Or we could say the groups are based on their advantages. So this is the super rich over here, and the medium rich over here, and the poor over here. That's the game being played. And so within that context, perceive there to be the individual. Concede that if you split the piece into pieces, you would find the individual. But the acknowledgement of the game, what the game is saying as a premise, is that the fact is that these pieces are equal, that their welfare, in the sense of how they feel, whether they're got a lot of black or a lot of white in them, they're having a good time or bad time, they're winning or they're losing, it's irrelevant what piece is doing that. All the pawns are identical in terms of having a welfare state. So I'm just arguing that point out the violation if you see a logical flaw, but I'm just saying logically, rationally, reasonably, there's no reason to presume any difference. They look alike, they act alike, they walk and talk alike in a lot of ways. They are alike. And the only thing that's really different about them, from this philosopher's perspective, is the value of their knowledge, their value of their influence, their capacity to influence. Some have no value in terms of no capacity to influence constructively. They're just machine pawns. They just do their mechanical little moves, and they can't do anything called strategy. They can't do anything to make all of pawn stronger, to give pawns the ability to make new moves, to give them the ability to diagonally leap across the board, fly to the moon, for example. Some have no value in terms of contributing to that kind of effort, where others would have high value. They'd be like Albert Einstein. They'd find formulas that release the power of the atom. They would do some other thing, a Salk vaccine, to greatly enhance the status of this piece called human, and progress it and evolve it into a higher plane of play, give it more power in the game. And that's the only real distinction. So the real thing to be valued is this capacity to find efficiency and function, progress. So I'm a progressive. I believe in the fact that there is facts to be gleaned from the world, that these facts can be used constructively, and that they can empower us to do right things in terms of the efficiency of the gameplay. So again, back to the game metaphor, what I want from you is some critique explaining how this metaphor does not apply. That in basic function, the pawns are not the same in terms of their need coefficient, i.e. a broken leg is a broken leg is a broken leg is a broken leg. And what distinguishes them is their value to the gameplay. How efficient will they make the gameplay? Will they make more pieces on the board, whether they're animal or human, white, more white, lighter, or will they make them darker? Will they put them in a lower state of being? And that from an overall perspective, from the grandest perspective of the game, overlooking the game, how is it illogical or unreasonable are unfactual, that really the only thing that matters is how light all the pieces are, how much lightness there is in net fact. That's really the efficiency you're seeking, is lightening the entire game, getting from the bad. Let's just get really away from the black-white thing. Let's go to red and green. Getting rid of the red and greening the game. And that's the game. That's what we're playing for. That's the win. So the game plays. There is no overt goal from the player's perspective in terms of their individuality beyond their personal ability to be green or red. But in the big picture play, what you're playing for is the green or red net of the whole game. And that's how you're going to be judged. That's how intelligence would gain intelligent perspective, objective perspective. The objective perspective is going to see that as the value. Now, you may argue there's a God over there. I'm going to say, demonstrate some evidence. Show me there's a God over there that says the game is about something else. Show me the something else in this, using my analogy. Explain to me what other important factor there is in this gameplay. And I'm going to argue there is no other important factor. What we want to do is use our intelligence as individuals to create efficient systems of gameplay that create more green than red. And it doesn't really matter what form of animal, what group of animal is gaining the green or the red. Outside the fact that, we don't want to be empowering the stupid, the dangerous. We don't want the idiots to rule the world. So that would be a conditional built in here somewhere, that the negative would be sometimes you have to make people feel bad to disable them from destroying the whole game, to prevent them from virally infecting the entire game with more red, because they're dangerous monsters with a red making hammer, and they will hammer your game into red. So yeah, that would be a conditional here. So then we could argue something like, yes, it's good to feed hungry people, but yes, it's also bad to make more hungry people. It's illogical. So you must feed them without making more of them. That's the rational response. The system says that's what the system must produce. And just as with our democracy, we say, yes, we need law and order. We need a reliable system of functionality. We need to know I don't have to hire bodyguards for my children to walk down the street. We need to have some sort of security and dependability in the world we live in. But we want to implement that in as pure and imperfect a way as possible, to create as few victims as possible, to maximize the efficiency of the application of those rules, to have good umpires and very well written rules. And that would be, again, back to system design. And that is the job of the philosopher, is to talk about the system, talk about these systems of perception, and say, how do we fix these mechanisms? What do they lack in the Nietzschean sense? Nietzsche was very good at critiquing everything on earth, and yet he was very bad at coming up with a better idea. His better idea was foolish and stupid and idiotic. He ran back to a DNA molecule. He tried to run back into the uterus and start over as an animal. And that's not a sensible, intelligent human response. We have to play the game right. You can't play it as an individual. You have to understand that what happens to the whole game is the only game. Again, so break that analogy. Show me where that analogy doesn't basically cover the basic function of the gameplay. We're playing for the stake, which is comfort, and we're just talking about its distribution in an efficient manner. Period. Efficient in the sense that, the red is bad, the green is good. You want to have as much green created with as little red as possible created. And yeah, that gets a little nuanced, and that we can argue about exactly what is worth what. But again, that's where it comes into other philosophical subjects of whether it's ever tolerable to torture one individual to gain something. If you were going to save the world from a meteor attack, is it okay to torture somebody for 1,000 years? To pick one individual who didn't consent to be drawn, who didn't consent to pull the small straw? Can you legitimately torture him for your gain? I would argue you cannot. And that's one of the rules acquired through Einsteinian intelligence. Einsteinian style intelligence teaches you that there are crimes you can't commit. There is blood you can never let. And if you let that sacred blood, that you can't go that low kind of standard, then you fouled the game. You've committed too big a trespass against the principle of fairness to justify gameplay. I guess that's enough. So anyway, the previous video was pretty good, and this one's quite adequate too. But anyway, that's my problem with you, is you keep bringing up these sort of, they're too nuanced an analogy. Like I said, you can play with Kafka forever about what exactly the message is and exactly what's being said. There's just no point in it. Simplify the argument. Reduce the functions. Let's come up with a E equals MC squared statement and then argue that. So this is my contribution. I've given you the simple metaphor. The game is basically comfort, sentient comfort. That's the stake being played for. And the argument is, how do you efficiently create that comfort? Yeah. Okay. Till next time.